If you use this product to carve your own stamps, you're definitely going to want to watch this video. I have a special technique that I use for organizing these stamps, but also more importantly, using them. It makes it far more convenient and easy. And since this is such a great product, you're going to want to know this. This is a really clever way to keep your stamps organized, and it's so much more convenient to use them. Because as you know, this is a really thin product. It's a great product. It's my favorite, but it's really thin. So it makes it difficult to use, but I've got just the tip for you. It's my system for using the stamps that I carve from this material and also storing them or organizing them. It's a really good system, and I think you're going to want to know about it. Also, stay till the end of the video and I'm going to share with you a way I clean my stamps. It's another clever technique that you're going to want to know. The system that I used to use was not a good one. It was very messy and it caused me a lot of problems, and I'm going to share that with you so you know what not to do. And you're going to understand why I now do this method. Now, if you buy a manufactured red rubber stamp, it's going to be mounted on a maple block and it's going to have an index on it. And this is what you've seen in stores. In the last 12, 15 years, they have developed some silicone clear stamps. I don't have a sample of them, but you've seen the clear stamps that come on plastic sheets, and you use them, they automatically stick on acrylic mounts. So acrylic mounts are a really great handle for hand carved stamps. They're a great handle for the silicone stamps. But today we're talking about my hand carved stamps. Now you could certainly mount your own hand carved stamps on wooden stamps, which I have done a lot, but they take up a lot of room. So that's why I think this system really works better. Now this is my favorite material, and they make another material called Speedy Cut. It's thicker, it's a putty color, and it is not as durable, and it will nick and break and crumble, but if you take care of them, they will last a long time. I've had many of these stamps that I've carved from Speedy Cut years and years and years ago. Some of them get a little bit nicked, but if you take really good care of them, they can last you your lifetime. So there's a little bit of savings there, and it does have a thicker material that's easier to hold. So this video is not sponsored by Speedball. I am just sharing with you their soft carving materials that I have experience with over the years. And for this particular method, primarily the pink Speedy Carve is going to work best. Now I've also used, there's another product on the market called Moo Carve, and I don't use it very often, but it's really thick. It's a nice thick block that you can use to make stamps with. Then when you're done with carving the stamp, you automatically have a handle that is really easy to hold on to. My concern about this product, and I don't use it very often because of this, even though it's convenient to have the real thick block that you can carve and use easily, that particular product, it doesn't have a smooth surface. There will be ripples in it, there will be wrinkles in it, I guess maybe when they're making the product and it's in liquid form, because I imagine it is, that there's some inconsistencies in the surface. So those ripples and those wrinkles, you will see it when you're stamping with it. So because of that, I don't use it as often as I could. Now I have used different techniques for mounting my stamps. I have used little pieces of thin foam, craft foam. It's a little bit thicker than the thin sheets. You can sometimes find them. Another product that's easy to find are these craft foam. They're the puzzle pieces that you put on the floor for children. And those seem to work really well. You can buy one and use it to mount stamps on, like I've done this one. This is also another clever idea that was not mine. It was from a stamping artist I knew years ago. And this is a garden kneeling pad. It works really well, and it gives a nice thick handle once you mount the stamp onto it. So that's another great alternative. When it comes to putting an index on the piece of foam. You can do it two ways. You can use a permanent ink such as Stays On to stamp directly on the foam. It's not going to give you a really clear image, so you might want to look at stamping the image on a piece of text weight paper, cutting it out, and then Mod Podging it or adhering it to the foam. And then once it dries, you can cut away the extra, making it look a little bit neater. And if it's a glossy finish, that will help sort of keep it somewhat clean, be easier to clean off. It's just easier to see, and I like that technique better. Now, if you want to mount your hand carved stamp on something a little bit more permanent, you can definitely use a wooden block, or you can use, if it's a small stamp, you can use a wine cork. I have several here that I have used throughout the years, and some of the tops of the corks, I put some paint on, some acrylic paint, let that dry, and then I would stamp the stamp on top of the painted surface, so it would be an index for what that stamp was. I have used a couple of different glues. In the past, I used to use E6000, but that glue will shift over time. So I've been really happy the last couple of years using Gorilla Glue as my glue to mount my stamps onto corks or other items. Another mounting handle you can use are thicker corks. I get these sometimes in candle crocks and I save them. You can see here that I even made a stamp out of one. Or even a wooden lid for certain things. Lids are really good if you can find them that are really solid, such as this wooden one, which was again from a candle. So just kind of get creative and you'll come up with some ideas. Another really good idea for a temporary mount, or it could be a permanent mount, is you can use a gift card. They're everywhere and you can cut them down to different sizes. If the edges get really sharp, you can kind of sand them down. Do that over the trash. Don't let it get in your life. And so these make a really good handle too, but they're not very thick, but in a bind, they'll work. I used to have a different system for using and organizing these stamps, but it was a mess. And I'm so glad that I migrated away from it because it was not working for me. And I'm going to share that with you because it's the perfect example of what not to do if you're using hand-carved stamps on acrylic mounts. So what I used to do, the mess that I used to create, I used to use double stick tape to mount my stamps temporarily onto my acrylic mounts. And it got to be such a mess because the residue from the adhesive would stick either to the stamp or to the block or both. And then that adhesive would get dirty and gummy and stick to other things too. And this is a perfect example. I had this stamp in the drawer where I keep a lot of my stamps. I pulled it out. These two were stuck together. The adhesive from the back side of the stamp got stuck to the front carved portion of this other stamp, and it was a mess. And then I had to take it and remove it using a kneaded eraser. That gummy residue, that adhesive, it gets dirty, and it got on so many different things in my studio and on my supplies that I just said enough is enough. So that's how I came up with this method. So this is one of the best systems I've discovered for keeping my unmounted stamps organized and usable and convenient. And it's basically just adding a two-way glue on the back, letting it air dry, and then it becomes repositionable, and then I store them on these sheet protectors that have cardstock inside, and there's an index that's been stamped so I know what stamp is where and where it belongs, and hopefully I'll try to stay organized. So after I carve my stamp, I use this two-way glue by Zig, and it is one of my favorites. I've tried other two-way glues. This is the one I really like. I will say, when you buy it and you start to use it, keep it stored standing upright, because if you put it on its side, it is going to spill out of the tip and it's going to fill the cap full of glue, and that becomes messy. That's the only downfall to this glue, so I can live with that. Just make sure you don't leave it on its side. This is the glue that I use for the back of the stamp. and it's a two-way glue, which means when it's dry and it's not adhered to anything, it's temporary adhesive. And it says on the back here, wet bond, permanent, meaning if you use it while it's wet and you secure it to something, it's going to be permanent. Dry bond, temporary, apply lightly and use after adhesive is dry, and the glue will be clear. When it goes on, it's blue, and I pump it a little bit. And I coat it very evenly and let it dry. And then when it's dry, it's clear, and I adhere it to an acrylic mount, and I'll leave the link for those below, as well as the glue. And then it's repositionable, so you can use the stamp again and again. Okay, now for the cleaning tip. This cleaning tip is for water-based inks or pigment inks. Inks that you're able to clean up with water. Permanent inks like Stays On or even the VersaFine Clear, they don't clean up with water. And what I end up doing with these is stamping off onto my art table paper, and that's how it ends up looking like this. So, perfect reason to make more art, and you're able to clean your stamps off. There is a cleaner by Stays On that I don't have. Yeah, here we are. Stays On does have a cleaner that I've used, and it works well. Also, I've used alcohol to clean this, but whenever I use these inks, I just stamp them off. But if it's a dye-based ink, or it's a pigment ink, or if I'm stamping with paint, which I do sometimes, this is a perfect way to clean your stamps. So what this is I have a little to-go food container, and inside of it, I have these refills for a paint edger. Now, since it has these little fibers and hairs, they get up into the stamp, they're able to access the crevices of the stamp that will be holding ink or paint and clean it out. It functions really well. Now, you could use a sponge or a washcloth, but I like to leave this in my studio and come back to it after it's dried out. I can just add more water. A sponge is going to mildew, and a washcloth would likely as well. So this is just a better system for me, and I think it's definitely worth sharing with you. Now, I will say this is a new clean edging paint pad. Does it stay looking like this? No, it does not. This is what it will look like. There's some residue of paint and ink at the bottom of the pan. And of course, the little brush pad gets very, very dirty. So even though it gets dirty, it still functions very well. So just be prepared. Listen, I gotta tell you one more thing. If you like this video, you're definitely gonna wanna watch this one here. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it.